Vampires, witches, and zombies are all classic examples of monsters, and since their inception, their own existence and the existence of other monsters have made their permanent residence in our culture and society. And as time passes and cultures change, and when our culture changes, so do our monsters. All of these monsters have changed in modern times, and they don't exactly resemble the monsters they once were. And with new mediums such as video games, podcasts, and the internet, new monsters and new monster stories have been created. Taking influences from these classic monsters, there are now new monsters, who are now just as much of a household name as Dracula once was. Video games have become very important vehicles for storytelling, monster creation, and culture sharing. It's a medium widely accessible by anyone these days, and backed with a lot of creativity. Many new worlds, mythologies, and stories have been created because of video games. Dracula from the Castlevania series, Pyramid Head from Silent Hill, Mewtwo from Pokemon, GLaDOS from Portal, Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, and Ganon from The Legend of Zelda. And these are just some examples of new infamous monsters and villains who have become iconic throughout the history of video games, and they have adapted old monster tropes to fit both the setting and contemporary time. In 1986, Nintendo released The Legend of Zelda, an action-adventure game which would become a foundational series for the video games industry as a whole, with over 6 million lifetime sales, and it would go on to have 26 installments, including original titles and remakes, with a new entry to this series coming in the spring of 2023. The world and the premise of The Legend of Zelda has always been fairly simple. Defeat the evil that plagues the land. And this premise will always be fairly simple. And for many of the series' installations, this recurring land-plaguing evil has had the same name in Ganon. From the earlier games in the series, Ganon was this catalyst of evil that prompted the call to adventure that each person loading the game would choose to answer. Ganon existed as a large, malicious, boar, human-like monstrosity who wielded a trident and whose hunger for power spread hatred and fear throughout the fictional world of Hyrule. This form of a humanoid boar pig acts as a symbol, pulling from many different cultures and myths. Often the boar is associated with ideas of greed, power, and hunger. Yet this animal-like form also supports the notion that Ganon is a force of nature, which would greatly agree with the series' mythology and cosmology in later entries. The reason that the monster of Ganon, or Ganondorf, is important to study is because of how vast the reach of video games are. In Zelda's most recent outing, Breath of the Wild, it sold over 27 million copies. In online spaces such as Zelda Twitter and the Zelda Reddit, which has over 2 million followers. That is a very substantial amount of people who are immersing themselves into a fictional world with non-fictional emotions, feelings, ideas, mythologies, and stories that relate and pull from different cultures from all over our real world. From the viewpoint of anthropology, that is a massive amount of people who are engaging in some form of kinship. Based on the enjoyment of this fictional media for them, the world of The Legend of Zelda is real because the themes present within the games are real, and so Ganon's monstrosity is also real. It wasn't until 1991 that this beast would be associated with a man. In The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, a revolutionary game for the industry, and would propel games from just quick arcade machine puzzles to works of art with stories, culture, and world building. This game introduced a backstory for the beast Ganon, telling that he was once a man known as Ganondorf Dragmire, the King of Thieves, who sought an almighty and unyielding power which could feed off his will and desires, turning him into Ganon the Beast. And then it wasn't until 1998 that fans of the franchise would finally be able to see Ganondorf in his human form. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which many would argue is one of the greatest games of all time, was revolutionary as well, as it was the first time that a Zelda game would be in 3D, making the world and its story that much more real and immersive. Ganondorf the Man was a cunning, powerful wizard who sought the almighty powerful Triforce, a set of 3 golden triangles left by the old creation gods that when touched, if the person who touched it had an equal balance of courage, wisdom, and power, would grant the wish of its user, the most powerful artifact in all of creation. The majority of this game is spent with the hero Link and the Princess Zelda working together against Ganondorf, the monstrous wizard, and only in the final act of the game, and a display of raw power, aided by the Triforce of Power, does he transform into Ganon, the Pig Beast. And so, this particular outing into the world of Hyrule further cemented Ganondorf as the most monstrous monster in the series. No villain could compare to the great evils done by Ganondorf, and for some entries in the series, he himself was not the evil, but the threat of his return or resurrection posed just as much a threat to this fictional world as his actual presence. The mere possibility of his return, his own being sitting on the border of becoming, was enough to threaten the peace in Hyrule. Using the 7 theses of Jeffrey Jerome Cohen's monster theory, we can learn in further detail about Ganon's own monstrosity and motivations, discovering how this evil wizard has become the most monstrous monster of them all. Number 1. The monster's body is a cultural body. The Legend of Zelda is the product of Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood experiences exploring Japan. The Zelda games themselves often pull from Shintoism as well as other mythologies around the world, using both the themes and principles to create underlying morals and ideals into the world of Hyrule, so that way the world feels more real. In the world of The Legend of Zelda, Ganondorf is born of a prophecy among a race of women who will only give birth to a man every 100 years. This man is destined to be their king, but it is by Ganondorf's own volition and hatred for the ruling family of Hyrule and desire for the rumored almighty Triforce that propels him on his journey to achieve this monstrous status. His own history is greatly intertwined with Hyrule's own history, to the point where the two are no longer separable. Number 2. The monster always escapes. Ganondorf is a being to whom death is meaningless. Though he is often defeated at the end of every game, time and time again he is either reincarnated or resurrected by some cruel cosmic joke. And wielding the Triforce of Power allows him to escape the permanence of death, and instead he is often sealed away by some magic performed by the Princess Zelda and the chosen hero. However, the passage of time breaks down every magical seal that imprisons him and allows Ganondorf the ability to plague the world once more. Number 3. The monster is the harbinger of category crisis. Ganon's own legacy in the world of Hyrule has granted him the status of legend or myth. In many games subsequent to Ocarina of Time, Ganon is often referred to as the embodiment of hatred and malice, the great evil, and in some extreme instances, the connection to his once human form is so far removed that Ganon's existence is seen as a natural disaster, i.e. the Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild. Every time Ganon/Ganondorf returns, the world is at risk to his subjugation. Having killed gods and decimated kingdoms, Ganon is both man and beast, sometimes phantom, yet at the same time, the only concrete way to define Ganon is by being the embodiment of evil. Number 4. The monster dwells at the Gate of Difference. Ganondorf himself dwells at the Gate of Difference due to his birth. Being the singular male born from a tribe of only women puts him as a social outlier. Ganon dwells at the Gate of Difference for being unique in his ability to change from beast to man. His own stature towers over the rest of the other characters in any setting. Additionally, Ganon comes from a land off to the desert, and the town itself sits on the border of society, further alienating Ganondorf, but still keeping him close enough within the reins of society. Number 5. The monster polices the border of the possible. Ganondorf's sorcery abilities and access to the Triforce of Power allow him to change the world on a whim and warp reality itself. Most of the impact of Ganon's evil is usually an apocalyptic level event, and his ability to kill gods and those in high status positions strike fear into everyone and make them question what is possible. Since Ganon is often unable to be permanently killed, in a cruel twist of fate he often scoffs at the idea of death, only ever being able to be sealed for hundreds of years at a time, but his return always seems inevitable. Number 6. The fear of the monster is really a kind of desire. Ganondorf becoming Ganon. The beast originates from the backstory of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Rumors of the Golden Power in the Golden Land had started to circulate around Hyrule, and there quickly became a struggle among many groups to find it, and Ganondorf, being the king of thieves, also joined in this struggle, and eventually even killed his own fellow thieves and comrades in order to secure the Golden Power for himself. Each part of the Triforce is usually associated with one of the main characters from The Legend of Zelda. Zelda is associated with the Triforce of Wisdom, Link with the Triforce of Courage, and Ganon with the Triforce of Power. It's this association with power, in his bestial form being a boar, representing some form of uncontrollable hunger and desire, and in this way he becomes desire, hunger, and power itself. Number 7. The monster stands at the threshold of becoming. The Zelda series has a timeline, and it wouldn't be sacrilege to deviate from it. However, with that being said, throughout Hyrule's history, in the backgrounds of most of the games, Ganon is not something that goes away. Every time he is sealed, he breaks through the cracks and returns more capable and sapient than before. Time and time again, he is able to bring Hyrule to its knees, and though there is often a hero to stand adverse to his evil, he does return with the same desire for power and to rule the world. And as mentioned earlier, Ganondorf's physical presence isn't needed to strike fear into the hearts of the entire land of Hyrule. Rather, the mere mention of his names. The thoughts of his presence, the immense and unceasing anxiety caused by his name is so great that within the most recent installment into the series, Breath of the Wild, Ganon is neither man nor beast, but takes the form of a phantom-like fog which plagues the land and serves as a reminder to the player of what the ultimate goal ahead is. This game takes place at least 10,000 years after Ocarina of Time, which was established as Ganondorf, the man, his first outing, and his impact has lasted longer in the world of Hyrule than all of recorded human history. Ganon does not only stand at the threshold of becoming, he is it. So, we've established Ganondorf's own monstrosity. He is, without any semblance of a doubt, a complete and total monster. But what does that mean? And what are the consequences of Ganon? Ganondorf functions in two ways. He functions as a threat to the society and world of Hyrule. His presence is a threat to that society. However, he also stands as a threat to the player. And the nature of video games allows for two parallel distinctions and relationships to be made between the player and the game. His monstrosity is rooted in power and desire for power, while that alone presents an anxiety to the player to be wary of, for its own messages of being greedy and consumption in excess, there's also great nuance in Ganon's own threat to Hyrule. Ganon, whether he successfully takes over Hyrule or is sealed away, has won. He is eternal and unceasing, so when the player has to take down Ganon again and again, they are confronted not only with evil, but its motivations behind it, but also learning what drives Ganondorf in his own personal motivations. Ganon is anxiety-inducing to both the player and the world of the game. The religious-like culture of Zelda games has shown that Ganon's own power is both deified and disturbing. For religion is never without its monsters, and Ganondorf is the monster to Hyrule's religion. He embodies the power aspect of the main governing force of religion in The Legend of Zelda, through the Triforce of Power, though it is only 1/3 of the whole Triforce. But his power is in excess, and that's where the multi-layers of both Ganondorf's character and the game's intention show itself. His power is excessive, he desires too much, and it always ends in tyranny, violence, and death, both in casualties and Ganon's own demise, though not always permanent. And it's these themes that tend to target the individual player who is able to insert themselves into this world. By playing on the side of the hero, they understand what is needed to not only combat the evil, but why that excessive desire for power is wrong. For this aspect, The Legend of Zelda is religious in nature, and the players taking upon the role of the hero submitting themselves to these rituals and beliefs, so then the players then able to learn and partake in this religion of Zelda. However, that is not the entire nuance of Ganondorf. He also presents an anxiety to Hyrule's royal family. Ganondorf comes from a tribe that sits deep on Hyrule's border of the desert, a race called the Gerudo. In the Zelda series, the Gerudo have consistently been the social outlier compared to all the other fictional races in Hyrule. So not only is Ganon's evil and desire for power come from his own internal villainy, he is also returning to Hyrule what has been done to him and his people. This is another motivation for his monstrosity, on a greater social level, to return what was done to him. And since Ganondorf is often a relic of the past, he can act as a regressive change to society, trying to bring back what once was, in order to finally get the win on his terms and conquer the Hyrule as he knew it, making it a very, very personal goal. Yet, as with every final act, Link, the chosen hero, will bring down Ganondorf, and the entire disruption to society that Ganondorf had brought is completely erased, and the cyclical story of The Legend of Zelda begins again where it started. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I had to do this as a final project for one of my classes, and it was really fun and stressful to do, though I wish I had more time. And if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.